I'm going to show you the most insane broken build in all of Lords of the Fallen.
Are you guys ready to be OP in Lords of the Fallen? Yep, this is the most broken weapon in the game.
Absolutely broken.
Absolutely broken.
Absolutely broken.
Someone must extinguish thy flame.
Before we start, I just want to say a few stuff. Aren't you guys tired of all the busted Radiance builds? Every content online slapped with shit like overpowered or broken. Well, I don't know about you, but I do. I'm so sick of all this nonsense. Clearly about the broken builds themselves, and not the fact that I'm kinda jealous that my own original builds aren't getting enough traction.
Bruh.
Although they are really so carefully thought of and 100% unique. I mean, who even thought about abusing the ability to change stagger enemies by using Frostbite to half their posture meter? And then use posture increasing items to completely annihilate their posture meter permanently. People just want the word broken or overpowered slapped on everything. Maybe I should do what they do too. Apparently, this is the kind of shit that actually get views.
Bruh.
What are we talking about again?
So weird.
Anywho, I gotta tell you that this run was truly a fucking ride. It took over 9 days, 10 streams, and way over 27 hours to complete. And guess what? This is only my second playthrough of the game. And my first playthrough was using a version of the Broken Radiance nonsense. I've finished the game literally day 2 of its release in just 12 hours. I'd even say 3 hours in there was just me AFK on alt tab while making big booby AI girls. So, broken shit ain't really gonna cut it for me no more. I needed to be humbled. So, can you beat Lords of the Fallen with nothing but your bare fists? The idea might sound kinda stupid at first glance. After all, the idea of weapons being in a Soulsborne's game is a no-brainer. But perhaps Lords of the Fallen made one thing slightly different. And yes, different they are. The rules for the run are as follows. I can only deal damage with my bare fists. No spells, no buffs, no summons. I can't overlevel beyond level 90. And I can only use 5 Briarstones total at a time. With an additional rule of only having 6 base charges of my Sanguinarix. With those out of the way, let's get started. When I was researching all the data that I could possibly get before I even attempted this run, I experimented a bunch to see what options I got, and I learned a few things. 1. The bare fists do 100% physical damage. 2. The raw base attack power is only affected by your strength and agi stats. And 3. Salts or weapon spell buffs won't work. So, goodbye status strats. And at the beginning of the run, that was it. Because of this, I went along and chose the Morset Infantry as my starting class, as I needed as much strength and agi early on for damage, with a bit of endurance and vitality so I can actually tank some hits. Radiance and Inferno being at low 8 isn't really an issue, as we don't plan on leveling them up anyway. So, after we finished the character creation to make the hottest lesbian bimbo you could possibly make on the game, we go on and do the early tutorials and early game nonsense. By this time, I was really enjoying my time using my bare fists. It had decent early game damage, and because at this time you can't really enhance weapons yet, so the damage difference was very negligible. I mean, I wasn't dealing high damage ratings, but I can at least 3-4 times hit really quickly, and the stamina costs of each hits are also very low. To add, the recovery frames after each hits are extremely short, enabling for a much faster and fluid combat. After the tutorial area was over, not long later was the Pieta fight. I went in thinking that it would be easy, as I pretty much first cycled her during my first playthrough. But this boss is actually quite difficult because of the FPS performance in her area is so bad that I'm getting spikes up to 3 FPS with some occasional zeros. That was brutal. The damage honestly wasn't the big issue. I would say the big mechanical difficulty I faced was honestly the lack of forward momentum. The bare fist moveset, you see, the running Superman punch deals only about 50% of the damage of the normal punches. It also locks you into the diving animation, and the recovery time is honestly quite long. This got me dead many times throughout the run, but after learning how to parry and dodge her attacks a couple times, with some patience, I got her down. With Skyrest unlocked, we can finally start to really make progress with the game. After scissoring our way through the Skyrest balcony very skillfully, we soon get in touch with Dambaros, the NPC that we needed to talk to unlock the Inferno ending. Once that's done though, is where the first big problem of the run begins. You see, this boss, the Scorched Sister, is an actual problem. I've died here a lot more than I'm willing to admit. And I think the issue was, 1, you see, my damage numbers are really starting to fall off. As you progress with the game, the monsters gain significant increases to their defenses and offense. And my bare fists, that are not really getting much from each levels, is really starting to fall off. The low poise damage is probably the second issue. I noticed that the bare fists got extremely low poise damage. This makes every hit pretty much not stagger even mid-tier enemies at all. So you can only get hits off really clean openings. And I think this became an issue when you're against hyper-offensive enemies that constantly move around and challenge you to trade. This is when I start learning how to parry properly. I think parrying is good on the first phase because her attacks are very telegraphed, and I think that you can almost always get clean parries off. At this point, I also learned that bare fists probably got the best parry frames out of anything else in the game, so getting it off isn't really a big issue. Sadly, the reductions of your hand is stuck at 20%. So this also becomes an issue during her second phase, because at this point, she was dealing way too much damage to me during each parries. So, I decided to get a shield to help me reduce some of the damage. And after a few tries, I got her. What the fuck? I get that using a shield to parry isn't really breaking the rule set or anything, as I was still only dealing damage by, well, punching the boss. But I do feel that this was a little bit on the gray area of things. So, yeah, we're not gonna be using the shield no more after this point. I just wanna let you guys know before the haters are typing on the comment section about oh, the run is fucking null, the run is fucked, and all that. Yeah, just letting you guys know, everything's fine, guys. Everything's fine. I needed to start dealing with the damage problems that we are currently facing. So, I decided to get the single most important item for this run. The Princess's Sting. Now, the Princess's Sting is a pendant that gives you more damage the lower your equip load is. This goes all the way up to about 25% at maximum boost. The hope is that this would surely crank up that Karen slapping power. And you see, this pendant was perfect for me because wearing so much armor shows that you're afraid. And the lesbian boxer fears nothing. And I think wearing so much armor on a challenge run like this, it's kind of lame, right? Plus, I suffer more. And that's funny. After getting our damage problem sorted out, for now, we continued onwards to Pilgrim's Purge. And boy, this place is as annoying as ever. After dying maybe 15 times on the beams, we managed to go through and unlocked Gerlinda, the blacksmith. Not that she's gonna be very useful for this run. Then it's Miss Doggo's time. This fight is truly where the Princess's Sting starts to show its worth. Our damage was looking pretty decent, and all I had to do was kill the dogs first. And once the dogs are dead, she's pretty much a normie feminist stuck on the octagon with us.
None of you seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you.
That's it! You're locked in here with me!
Once that's all done, we're going for the Congregator of Flesh next. And for this fight, all I needed to do was dodge during his telegraphed body slams and just keep punching. To be perfectly honest, he's a bit too slow to keep up with my speed. And, well, guess what? I beat him on my first try. He fucking ate me, dude. What the fuck? My god, dude! I made a mistake there. I made a mistake. Alright, I couldn't get... Once the Congregator of Flesh was done, we went onwards with a new area to go through, the Forsaken Fen. But before that, I decided to get an Umbral Eye that might be useful for the run. The Umbral Eye of Loesch. Now you see, this Umbral Eye is probably, if not, the strongest Umbral Eye in the game. And what it does is actually quite simple. It gives you 100% hyper armor during the charging animation of your charged heavy. And any damage that you take during that is converted into withered health, which is then pretty much replenished when your charged heavy lands. So I thought that this could be a useful tool for the run. So we went to get it first. This will, however, make us skip spending Vigor for a few levels, because we do need to buy the Pilgrim Perch Key from Skyrest. And honestly, the journey is quite far, and let's just say it took a while before I could get this without dying. After we're done with all that, we can now start with Forsaken Fen. And I would say this area is quite simple until you reach the Mendacious Visage. But I think that this boss is just pretty flawed, I would say. It's pretty well designed, but it's pretty flawed. All you need to do is pretty much just dodge most of his slow attacks and just hit him on the ass whenever his face is closed. And then when his face opens, you can just rip him apart. Or you can soulflay him, and that will always 100% give you a grievous attack, because it will completely fuck up his posture from 100% to 0. So that's some tips that you can probably do to try and make this fight a lot easier for yourself. But I think for me, this was pretty easy, and I think I cleared it pretty fast. Once that's done, we can finally go back and progress with Forsaken Fen. This area is, to be honest, not that bad, so after getting by without much issues, it's the Hushed Saint fight. You see, the Hushed Saint is actually a pretty easy boss. His attacks are relatively slow, and all you need to do was be patient. But unfortunately, patience isn't really one of my most incredible virtues. And I did die here a couple times due to that. However, I do learn a couple things. I realized that I could just take it slow early on, wait for his spear throw that will chain into him jumping straight at us. This will then be followed by 3 spear slashes or 3 shield bashes. Those you can parry or dodge, but I think I end up dodging a lot more on this fight, because I think it gives a lot more consistent result. Once he goes to 70% HP or so, he'll return back to his horse and do a whole marathon around before repeating phase 1. Once his HP gets to about 50%, this will then get him to move back to his horse again, do the whole marathon again, and finally stay on foot for the whole remainder of the fight. I would say the only big move he does is when he explodes the ground. That creates this huge death waves. He can do that on or off his horse. And I think once you're able to dodge that consistently, this fight is pretty much in the bag. I think this took me 5 attempts to finally finish him off. Here's the fight. after the Hush Saint was defeated, we've officially graduated the Dummies Academy. And, well, I think it's all gonna go uphill from here on out. Doors to the Fitzroy's Gorg is finally unlocked, and we are not going to slow down. So, off to the Crimson Rector. The Crimson Rector is a very interesting boss. His moveset is honestly very easy to predict and dodge. However, he has this annoying gimmick where he will start regenerating his health once he reaches a certain HP threshold. And I think that this can make fights go for much longer than it's supposed to be. Especially when you're pumping the rookie damage numbers, like we are. So you have to break the spirit balls that spawns near him whenever he does that. This will dispel his regenerating spell and make the fight much easier. Aside from all that, all I need to do was just punch whenever I dodge a big attack, and just keep dodging until that happens. Parries are good here, but I think I stick to dodging for the most part. I just beat him on my first try. And honestly, this fight is a lot easier once you know what to do. And luckily for me, my first playthrough had taught me a lot to enable that. Once that's done, we can finally backtrack a little bit and fight the Ruiner mini-boss that will try to stop your progression. Now that's a thick boy right there!
Damn, boy, he's thick!
But this fight is actually a lot easier than what he appears to be. Because most of that is probably due to his extremely slow attacks. You'd think that the small bridge area might be kind of tricky, because it disables a lot of maneuvers. But honestly, this fight was a first try for me. I think that the punch are already really starting to hurt. I still need to dodge properly though, because, I mean, we shouldn't forget that we traded pretty much our whole defensive potential for the damage boost. After the Ruiner was down, we can finally progress to Kalrath. And man, I fucking hate this place. It's just mobs after mobs after mobs just chasing you down, and I just really don't understand who had come up with this enemy placements. Huh? Who hurt you? Why are you so weak? Why? You need more MSG to make your life better. No MSG, you become like this. It's so sad, what? So sad? Anywho, after a while, we finally reached the mandatory mini-boss fight with the Enchantress. Now, this boss is, to be perfectly clear to you, is more annoying than actually hard. To make this fight possible, you had to break all 4 of the spirit balls that are scattered around the arena to disable the burning aura that's surrounding her and dealing damage to you. This must be one of the things when people say that many of the boss fights in this game are artificially difficult. As known as, the game forces you to do annoying shit, and then more annoying shit, and then more annoying shit, and then after that, the fight becomes free. So after she was dead and open up progression again, we are not wasting any time and quickly get to the next big shit. The only irony in that is, the next part is actually a big looking shit. This boss is pretty much what you call a noob cockblock. When you don't know what he's doing, he could be one annoying twat. Like, for real, like this boss was really annoying during my first playthrough because I didn't know what I was doing. But after you do know what you should do, the boss is honestly quite easy. He's got those simple, slow attacks that you can clearly see. And he's only got about 4 attack patterns during the first phase, but 5 attack patterns on the second phase, one of them being an area blocker, so you had to go through the other platforms to continue fighting him. With probably one other spell, probably an area removal spell that you can only block by standing behind these thin walls. I mean, how the fuck does these even do anything? What the fuck did they put in the wall, man? Flex tape? Anywho, this is the fight. Once we're done with the progeny, we can finally take a little breather. The next place we're going to, as bleak as it may look like, is somewhat a little bit better than Kalrath. At least we won't have fire zombies running us down everywhere, trying to insert their burned up ding dong up our ass. We instead get something a little bit better. Dogs. Yes, dogs. A man's best friend, back at my place. A really annoying butt-smelling furry around here. They can shit on you faster than Amber Heard can shit on her bed. So that's really something. Anywho, this place doesn't have much for us. So, after traversing the area with haste, we got to our first hurdle to run. The Skin Stealer. Now you see, this boss has a very similar attack pattern with another boss that we will be fighting later on. So this was a really good opportunity to learn new ways to maneuver around and figure out dodge and parry timings that we can implement for the later fight. He's also a lot faster than most, if not all, the bosses we had fought so far. So this is truly a new experience that I want to savor. The Skin Stealer's moveset is honestly quite hard to predict at times, because sometimes he would do the 2 side swipes followed by a very fast cross slash, and at times he would extend the 2 side swipes with even more side swipes. But in really extreme cases, he could even swipe and do nothing for about half a second. I believe that this might be a maneuver made to roll catch players, but as all might sound complicated and all, unfortunately this boss can almost be cheesed the same way Lady Butterfly does in Sekiro. Just hit twice, dodge, hit twice, dodge, and repeat. However, that's not fun. So we will actually try to fight him without the cheese this time. We needed to practice for the later fight after all. So, once the Skin Stealer was defeated, just a few platform jumps later is another boss. And this one is a bit different. Very different from what we used to fight up to this point. Because instead of fighting one guy, we're fighting 3 at once. This could be overwhelming for first timers, but actually if you move a little bit far enough between, some of them stops to aggro on you for a few seconds. And at the time that they dive into the shadows, you can actually abuse that to get a few hits on the other Reapers. The key is to go with the 80-20 rule. And what that means is you focus 80% of your damage on one Reaper and 20% on the others whenever the opportunity arises. They're also individually quite frail, so this didn't take too long. Now, once this nonsense is finished, we have to go high ground to do 2 very important things. The first one is a no-brainer as we need to unlock the next important location. But the other one, I think, would be too important for this run. And that would be to get the Queen Verina's ring. It will give us pretty good HP regen. I wouldn't say it's that amazing, probably only a couple HP per second. However, it might be able to help us get some sustain to stay in the fight, in case we take some damage here and there. So we want to get that first. Now after this, we have a bunch of options to do. Do we go for the ice cream route, or do we go to the church area? Honestly, either way is fine. And although most would want you to go to the ice area first, I decided to do the latter and went towards the church area first. Now, before we start all this, I just need to tell you one thing. about this area. This area is actually fucked. Like, it's not a joke. Like, this area is actually fucked. The FPS drops that I get in this one area is so bad, where we're talking constant 16s to 32s with tons of 4s and 0s. It's so bad to the point where I have to restart the game multiple times throughout the stream. Because the FPS was just unbearable. It's actually insane. But after a quick beer, lots of cigarettes, and accepting reality, we march onwards to the demands of Hallowed Brothers. Now, this area is probably my second most hated area, only behind the final area of the game. Why? Because it's a mix of all the fucking nonsense that this game's got. Just tons of mobs, a buttload of them in every single corner, every single side path, every single cliff, every single corner, everywhere. And the FPS performance in that area is also as fucked up as this one, if not worse. So, sometimes it makes you feel like you're playing the game The Demon of Cthulhu back in 1900s. It's actually insane. With all the ranting done, we head onwards to the next boss, the Defenders. This is a 2v1 boss format, and although this took a while to get through due to them, well, spamming spells here and there, all you needed to do was actually just focus on the ranged one first, and you leave her at 20% HP. And then you focus on the melee boy. It's very important not to kill the first one too fast, because the other will resurrect them not long later. So you had to keep them at the low amount of HP and then kill them both. Because if you don't do that, it's gonna make the fight last a lot longer than it's supposed to be. And honestly, aside from the FPS drops, this fight wasn't too hard. So, after the twins are sent to the graveyard, we march onwards to the Tower of Penance. However, we gotta kill this dude guarding the bridge first. The banished Knight Sanisho, or whatever his name's called. This fight is more of a gimmick fight. You just gotta be really aggressive and kill him as soon as possible before the poison starts to rack up and kill you. It's honestly a pretty easy fight. Just a little annoying time race. This took me a single try. With Sanisho down, we traverse into the Tower of Penance to reach the depths of the tower. And this is probably a place where dreams go to die. This boss took me hours to beat. For once, I felt hopeless. He was significantly more tanky than any other boss that we've fought before, and this made the fight take an extremely long time, which makes mistakes more likely to happen. And because he hits really hard too. I would say due to our lack of any defensive investment, we couldn't really take any hits. Most attacks would either one-shot us or leave us almost dead. To add, his swipes and stabs are extremely quick and comes at very weird times. All that, on top of the horrible FPS of the area, just got me killed many times over. And I was turning hopeless, as the level cap was really getting pretty close. I think I was level 74 at this point. But when there's a problem, we look for solutions. After about 1.5 hours in with no success, I went back to the drawing board, thinking about possibly anything, just anything, that could help us overcome this issue. And then it hit me. Although by the rule set I can't use the shield or weapons to block, parry, or attack, I can still equip it. This meant that I can socket runes on them. This idea got me started in a whole marathon of tests on what runes could possibly work. And after the whole testing, I've learned a lot of things, but mostly is that most of the weapon runes couldn't really translate to my fists. However, there are some on the shield that does. The bare fist damage comes from my strength and agi stats. And there are 2 runes in particular that I can socket into my shield. That adds about 3 stats of that rune with a reduction in another. In particular would be 3 plus 3 strength minus 1 agi, or vice versa. And because a shield can be socketed with 3 runes, I can slot 2 of the strength runes and 1 of the agi runes, which gave me a total of 5 strength and 1 agi. Since the strength runes give me plus 3 strength minus 1 agi times 2, and the agi rune gave me 3 agi minus 1 strength. Basically speaking, it gave us about 6 levels worth of damage, which, in retrospect, it really isn't much. But it was one of the only few things that I got going. And at this time, I also learned that the Umbral Eye of Loge that we got early on isn't really doing me anything. Due to the naturally low damage of my fists, it's just not worth the slot. So we went for the only other eye I thought could work. This being the Eye of Hooded Antuli. I think this eye is one of the things that we picked up in Fitzroy's Gorg back then. And with only these ideas left in the tank, and no other, I went back. Just to die again, and again, and again. Many, many more times. And at this point, reality struck. Thoughts in my head are starting to get really cloudy. Wondering to myself if ego had gotten the better of me to even attempt this run. I mean, I was thinking if I was stupid, or was I crazy? Why am I doing this to myself? And perhaps the reality of things was, there was really only one way that I could get through this. I needed to get good. And after about an hour later, that power awakened.
何人もの人がその力を次へと託してきたんだよ。みんなのためになりますようにと、一つの希望となりますようにと。次はお前の番だ。
Alright. That fight was a big deal. But we're gonna keep going. We've got a whole ton of work to do. This time, we're gonna clear out the ice area. So, after we got the Thief's Key at Skyrest, we can just teleport to the early game area, the Windmill Vestige, and open the gates that will lead us to the Thief's Chilled Curse. Not long after, we are greeted by the first mini-boss of the area, the Kenranger Guardian. This boss is actually quite easy, but he's got 3 dogs that will really annoy you. So we gotta take them out first before we could deal with him. This part is kinda straightforward. Just kill the dogs, and the boss itself is actually cakewalk. Just another gimmick fight, like the Enchantress that we met in Kolroth. After we got past him, we gotta traverse into the Thieves of Chilled Curse. The enemies here are all going to inflict frostbite buildup, so that is very bad. Especially for us, because our build needs a ton of stamina to actually function. We traded out pretty much all our defensive potential for damage and speed after all, so you do need the stamina to actually maneuver around. About 20 minutes in, and we arrived at the second mini-boss of the area, Rowena. This boss is relatively soft and doesn't have a ton of mobility nor annoying gimmicks, so this one is pretty much a free fight. Once she's done, we can continue traversing with the area. And, well man, this area takes up a lot of walking. But afterwards, we finally reached the end of the Thieves, which meant the big boss of the area. For this time, it's gonna be the Hollow Crow. And here, we had to employ the first combat strategy of the run. This boss is 100% a gimmick fight, which is meant to overwhelm you with terrain status and a bunch of mobs. However, the upside is, we don't need a ton of damage for this one. So we just took off our pendant, slapped the defensive pendant, and invested 100% of our gears on defenses instead. I understand that this will really cut down our damage by a lot, but like I said, this fight don't require much damage at all to clear. It's a gimmick fight after all. All we had to do is survive. And Soulflay, the ice spirit, whenever she comes out, just hit her a bunch of times to break the spirit gauge. So basically the spirit gauge represents a portion of the boss's HP. So by hitting the woman, you technically hit the boss. Damn, there's a lot of hitting women involved in this game. The feminist rally must be going nuts if they have known about this one. Anywho, by finally breaking the spirit gauge once, you will trigger the first terrain bullshit phase. And this is why we went for defenses instead. Because honestly, the mobs don't pose as much of an issue compared to the terrain shit. And once this phase is over, the second phase will start. And all we had to do was repeat phase 1. And once phase 2 is over, back again to the terrain bullshit. And finally, after you get through this part, just repeat phase 1 again until the boss dies. God damn it, dude, these people are not really getting kind of creative. This area is honestly a lot easier than what we went through on the chapter before. I mean, it's honestly a no-brainer. There's not really as much stuff to do, so... I mean, look, we are meant to do this first, before that one after all. But oh well. By going to the Mans of Hello Brothers, we could take a left detour right before we go to the Tower of Penance and instead enter a different area. This area is called the Mans of Hallowed Sisters. Not brothers, sisters. Okay. Alright, this area is just as retarded as the previous one. Just instead of knights and crossbow nonsense, you get archers and barbarians. Right. Right after you enter the area, 3 minutes later, boom. Mini boss fight. But luckily for us this time, it's actually pretty easy. Another frail caster that honestly couldn't do much against the power of the lesbian boxer, guys. Alright. Not long later, anyway, boom! She got fucked. It's actually a pretty easy fight. Moving along, this area isn't too big though, so after we managed to get through the nonsense, we finally arrived at the second boss of the area. The Huntress. Now you see, this Huntress fight will force the Iron Wayfarer to fight alongside us. So I can't really do much about it. I mean, it's a forced summon. So, oh well. I mean, having a summon during the fight honestly just made all of this way too easy. So this fight was basically free. And once we killed her, the Iron Wayfarer will take away the root of a deer. But before we gotta get that back, we just gotta do one more thing. And that's to unlock the next area, the Empyrean. You see, this area is extremely small, so there's really not much to talk about. But this area hosts one thing. And that's arguably the hardest boss of this game. The Judge Cleric. So, let's get her. This pretty looking boss is a two-phase fight, and honestly it's quite hard. I had some issues here during even my first playthrough when I was using the Broken Radius build, so we are bound to have some issues here. This boss has a ton of health, just like Tancred, so the same issues will undoubtedly be repeated. However, with our unbreakable mentality after that ordeal with Tancred, this boss really isn't gonna stand in our way for long. The first phase of the fight involves just mostly a lot of slashes and stabs. And they hurt. A lot. But after she reaches about 50% health, she will imbue her weapon with more holy damage. So, she'll hit a lot harder. Which is not good news for us. However, that isn't really all there is. Because after somehow you beat her phase 1, there's phase 2. And in this one, she took that makeup off and turns extremely ugly. That makeup must have really cost a lot to be able to hide that shit behind. Anywho, this fight is basically a lot like phase 1. But now she's got a lot more mobility, she can inflict burn status, and get a few changes into her attack patterns. This took us about an hour, but eventually, we got her done. Oh yeah, here's the fight. after the judge has been found guilty, we have only one last thing to do before we can go towards the final area. We're gonna square our score with a Light Reaper. And let me tell you this. This fight is probably my one favorite out of the whole game. And I'd like to show you guys the whole thing without any cuts. I hope you guys don't mind. Enjoy. That fight still give me goosebumps sometimes. But that's all done, so once all the shit has been cleared, we can finally go towards the end game. So we're going to head straight to the final area. But first, we gotta take this fucker out. The Iron Wayfarer is also another boss that needs us to do some adjustments. For this fight, we went to do the same setup as the fight that we had with the Hollow Crow. So we went to invest 100% purely on bulk and defense for this one. Cause the thing is, the fight happens in this extremely small area, and his attacks got huge AoE. By knowing this, we can't really make use of our mobility in this space. And the damage that we deal isn't really that important for this fight too. The reason for that is because he's extremely tanky, even with our Princess Sting setup. So, all we needed to do is to keep attacking him while trying our best to survive some of the ground AoE nonsense that he keeps on throwing at us. I hope that the added bulk alongside our regen ring should give us the necessary sustain to survive, given that we do dodge most of his attacks. This fight took about an hour and a half to complete. It's really one annoying boss. But once all that's over, we can finally head to the final area of the game, the Brahmis Castle. Now I've said this once, and I'm gonna say it again. I rank this place the worst area on the game. The FPS drop in this area is by far the worst. And the level of mob density in this area is way higher than any other map in this whole game. It's absolutely insane. It's a total fuckfest. The whole place is a total fuckface. And unfortunately, we don't have the kind of tools to kill each and every one of them. So we will have to skip most, if not all, the mobs around. And after about half an hour, we finally reached the final boss for this run, the Monarch. This fight is mostly just a battle of endurance. The only big issue is the AoE of his attacks. They're really big. And the damage plus the bulk. But that's really all there is. To be perfectly honest, I'm quite disappointed with how the final bosses of the game are designed. The Monarch for our ending, a Deer for the Radiance ending, and the other one are all extremely boring fights compared to, say, the Judge Cleric, or the Light Reaper, or Tancred. Anywho, after we finish the boss off, we can talk to a Deer, empower all the beacons, and end the game. The challenge was truly a fun ride. You could say that I am pleased with how viable the bare fists are in this game. I also think that this might be the easiest Souls game I've ever played. And trust me on this, I've played nearly all of them. The game being easier doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. In fact, I think that it allows more people to enjoy this genre game. And to me, that's a positive thing. It's a good change, given that FromSoft tends to make the bar for entry a bit too high for most people, in my opinion. Talking about my first and second playthrough, I think that we can learn from these games that all of these similar games follow the same difficulty format. And I believe that this is the best format. It's one that you chose for yourself. You can use broken builds and make the game really easy. You can use throwables and magic to make the game a cakewalk. Or you can do none of that and make the game difficult Overall, I would say Lords of the Fallen is quite fun. However, there's a lot of work that needs to be put on it. Saying a lot is probably a huge understatement, because honestly, there's really a buttload of things that I think needs major fixes. To name a few, the mob density, the mob's leash distance, the game performance, and many more. But that's a story for another time. It's your Uncle Big Fish, and that's it from me. And I'll see you guys again on the next one. Have a nice day, guys.